Hey guys, here's your guys' homework on rational root theorem worksheet. Okay, so students will be able to use the rational root theorem to find the root zeros of a polynomial function. So here are the steps on how you guys could solve for your polynomial functions and find your guys' zeros. Step 1, find your guys' list of P over Q of all your possible rational zeros. Then you guys gotta figure out which one of these possible rational zeros is a factor of your polynomial by using synthetic division. And then you keep using synthetic division until your polynomial gets to a degree of 2, and then you guys solve your remaining zeros by factoring. So, in these problems, it says state the possible rational zeros, then find all your zeros for each polynomial. So first you guys have to know your P factors and your guys' Q, which is 1. So all our factors of 3, you guys, are 1 and 3, and all our factors of 1 is just 1 and 1. So when you guys make your P over Q list, these are just all the factors of P and Q. So all the factors of P are plus and minus 1 and 3. And all your guys' factors Q is plus and minus 1. It's plus and minus, you guys, because, right, to get positive 3, you could do 1 times 3 or negative 1 times negative 3. To get 1, you could do 1 times 1 or negative 1 times negative 1, which is why it's plus and minus for all of these numbers. And then you guys have to divide all the top numbers by the bottom numbers. 1 divided by 1, plus or minus 1. 3 divided by 1, plus or minus 3. So these are all your guys' possible rational zeros. But we don't know which one will give us a 0. So we have to guess and check. We have to guess and check to see which one will give us a remainder of 0. Because if it gives us a remainder of 0, we know that that 0 is a 0 and it's one of our factors. So this is where you guys use synthetic division. You can only use these numbers: 1, -1, 3, or -3. So if we guessed using 1, let's say we think 1 is one of our zeros, you guys, then you gotta write down the coefficients: 1, 1, -5, and 3. And this is where you guys have to think, is this going to give us a remainder of 0, right? So if you guys did do 1 times 1 is 1, you add 2. 2 times 1 is 2, you add, it's -3. -3 times 1 is -3, and that's 0. So we hit, right? So we know that this is an answer. This is a 0, you guys, and a factor. So now let's solve for this. Okay, since this started with a degree of 3, that means this is a degree of 2, and then you guys go 1 degree less. So we have this quadratic function of x squared plus 2x minus 3. So let's factor this, and then we can factor out this trinomial, and we'll get what two numbers multiplied to -3, but when added gives you guys 2. That's positive 3 and -1. And since a is equals to 1, these will just be part of our factors, right? X plus 3 times x minus 1 equals 0. So what value of x would make this whole thing a 0 if x was equals to -3? What value of x would make that whole thing be 0 if x was equals to 1? So our final answer is -3, 1, and the 0 that we guessed, which was 1. -3, 1, and 1. And those are your guys' answers. Okay, let's do number 2. So for number 2, right? For number 2, you guys, find your guys' P and Q. Factors of this is going to be 1 and 2. Factor of this is 1 and 3. So your guys' P over Q is going to be plus and minus 1, right? Factors, plus and minus 2, plus and minus 1, and plus and minus 3 for your guys' Q. Now, you have to do all the top numbers divided by the bottom. So 1 divided by 1, 2 divided by 1, that's plus or minus 1 and 2. Now you have to do 1 over 3, you guys, which is plus or minus 1/3, and 2 over 3, which is plus or minus 2/3. So out of these 8, we have to figure out which one will give us a 0 for a remainder. Now I'm going to show you guys one that will fail. So if you guys think that it's positive 1 as one of our answers, if you guys look, right, 3 times 1 is 3, you guys add, 11 times 1 is 11, you guys add, it's 14, 14 times 1 is 14. Clearly, this does not give us a remainder of 0, which means that this 1 is not going to be an answer. It's not going to be one of our factors either. So that means you need to try a different number. Let's try -1. 3 times -1 is -3, you add, it's 5. 5 times -1 is -5, you add, it's -2. -2 times -1 is 2, you add, it's 0. So, we did find one of our answers, right? It's going to be -1. Now remember, every time you're successful, the degree of this polynomial will go one less down, right? So since that starts with x to the third, this is going to be x to the second, and this will be x. So let's factor this. So let's do your guys' x method, right? A times c up top, b on the bottom. So 3 times -2, -6, 5 on the bottom. The two numbers, I multiplied a -6, but when you guys add it, gives you 5. That's 6 and -1. And since a is greater than 1, you guys, that means you guys got to factor by grouping. These 4 numbers are your guys' ones you would use for factoring. So 3x to the second. The combination of the two middle terms, right, minus 2. Factor by grouping, we can factor out a 3x from here to get x plus 2. We can factor out -1 from there to get x plus 2. 3x minus 1 times x plus 2. So this 0 is going to be -2, you guys, but this one's trickier because you have to figure out what value of x would make that 0. So if you're stuck, what you guys could do is just set this equals to 0, and you guys solve. X would equals to 1/3. So x is ultimately going to equal to 1/3, -2, and -1 from the one we found previously. Okay, number 3. Okay, so p is -11, q is 1, so factors of q, 1 and 1, factors of 11, 1 and 11. So our p over q is going to be plus or minus factors of p, plus and minus 1 and 11, plus and minus 1. Divide the top by the bottom, 1 divided by 1 is plus or minus 1, 11 divided by 1 is 11. So this is our list, right? We got 4 numbers to try. 1, -1, 11, or -11. So I'm going to try, so this is where you guys got to guess and check, right? If you guys try -1, right? Coefficient 1, -13, 23, and -11. 1 times -1, -1, add, -14. -14 times -1, positive 14, add. I'm going to stop right there. And I know to stop right here, you guys, because that is not going to make this become a 0, right? So you can't use -1, so you try a different number. How about we try 1? Write down the coefficients of the polynomial still. 1 times 1 is 1, add -12, -12 times 1, -12, add, you guys get 11, 11 times 1, 11, 0. So we found an answer, right? So 1 is definitely an answer. Now remember, x to the third, so it's going to go 1 degree less, and then 1 degree less. So let's factor this, right? 11 up top, -12 at bottom. The two numbers that multiply to 11, but when added gives you guys -12. That's a -11 and -1. So our factors are x minus 11 times x minus 1. And when we solve for this, right, x has to equal 11 here, and x got to equal to 1 right there. And don't forget that from our original answer, we found that another x equals 1 is also part of the answers, right? Number 4. Okay, here's your p. Here's your guys' q. Factors of 5, 1 and 5. Factor of -5, 1 and 5. So when you guys do your p over q, it's going to be plus and minus 1 and 5 and plus and minus 1 and 5. So 1 and 5 divided by 1, you guys, is just itself, so 1 and 5. But then 1 over 5 is a new number. 5 over 5 is not a new number, because 5 over 5, you guys, is just 1, which is already in the list. So these are the numbers that we have. We got 6, 1, 5, 1/5, or the negative versions of all those, right? So you guys have to guess and check by using synthetic division to see which one will give you guys a remainder of 0. One of the answers will be -1. 5 times -1, -5. Add 24. 24 times -1, -24. Add -5. -5 times -1, 5, 0. So 1 degree less than x to the third, so this is going to be x to the second and x. And then this is something you guys should know how to factor by doing your guys' x method and grouping. 5 times -5 is -25. 24 on the bottom, so we get 25 times -1. And since a is greater than 1, you guys got to factor by grouping. So this term, this term, this term, and that term. 5x squared plus 25x minus x minus 5. Group. You guys can factor out 5x from the first group to get x plus 5 and -1 from the second group to get x plus 5. They match, so we get 5x minus 1 times x plus 5 equals 0. Now this one, what value of x will make that whole thing go to 0? That would be -5. For this one, you guys, set that equals to 0 so we can isolate our x. Add 1 to both sides, divide both sides by 5. X is equals to 1/5. So x equals 1/5, x equals -5, and don't forget the x that we guessed correctly, which was x equals -1. Okay. Here's number, actually, I think 5 and 6, those ones that I think you guys could do, but let's do number 7 to just finish it off, right? Now this one, you guys, this one's your P, this one's your Q. So you guys gotta do a P over Q list, plus and minus 1 and 7, all your factors for 7, and 1 and 5 for you guys' factors of Q. So plus and minus 1 divided by 1, 7 divided by 1 for 1 and 7. 1 over 5 gives you guys a new number, so 1/5, and 7 over 5 also gives you guys a new number. So we have 8 numbers to check from, right? 1, 7, 1/5, and 7/5, and all the negative versions of all of those. So one thing we could do is we can guess if it's 1. So write down the coefficients of your polynomial to see if it's right. 5 times 1, 5. Add -41. -41 times 1, -41. Add, you guys get 43. 43 times 1, 43. Add -7. -7 times 1 is -7. Add, you guys get 0. So we struck gold on this one, right? We found a 0 remainder, which means that x minus 1 will be a factor, and this is a 0. But when you guys find this degree, isn't this 1 less than this one? So it's x to the third. This is still something we do not know how to factor, right? So a solution, you guys, is go find another 0 so that we can decrease this degree by another 1 to get it to be x to the second power. So if we guess 7, right? Because we have yet to try that one too. Oh, I don't know why I drew just the coefficients. So let's try it, right? Let's try a new 0 of 7. 5 times 7, 35. Add -6. -6 times 7, -42. Add 1. 1 times 7, 7. 0. So again, we found another number that gave us a remainder of 0. And this degree is 1 less than this one. So this is x squared and x. Which is perfect because then you guys, we can factor this by your x method, 5 and -6, -5 and -1. And since a is greater than 1, that means you guys, we have to factor by grouping. This term, these two, and that one. So we got 5x squared minus 5x minus x plus 1. Factor And you guys factor out a 5x to get x minus 1, factor out a negative 1 to get x minus 1. 5x minus 1 times x minus 1 equals 0. So our remaining zeros are x equals 1 here. That one, if you don't know that's 1/5, then just equate that to 0 so that you can solve for x, you guys. So x equals 1, 1/5, and don't forget the zeros that we found earlier, right? X is also equal to another 1, and x is also equals to 7. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Here are the answers on the bottom. Oh yeah, -6. Answer for -6 is one of them is -1. But you guys certainly try out 5 and 6, and hopefully you guys are successful based off all these examples. Okay, good luck everybody. Peace.